guys are the best.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Dakota?
Here.
Ms. Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Hoey?
Here.
Mayor Kennedy?
Here.
7 present.
The first order of business on the latest version of the agenda for this evening is a discussion of the superintendent's evaluation. Is there anybody who would like to open the discussion?
Yes. I
Mr.
would.
Hoey.
I thank you for the paperwork you just gave me there. I'm kind of looking at which one I am. Here, I'm pretty sure I can pick him number 1. I think the guy did an extremely great job since I've been here. I think the school committee is definitely better than the one I was on, and nothing against that one. I just think we're handling this pretty well, considering what went on here for a few years. And I just think we should let the mayor continue to do what he's doing. Some evaluation numbers are different. Obviously, not all of us feel the same. But I haven't thanked you yet for what has happened so far to me. The Riley School is now a level 1. I know you made some big moves at the Sullivan School for me and for the school committee, but I know I was pestering you on those things. And I could say many more things, but the biggest thing I want to say tonight is when I sat in front of George Sapasavis, I would ask him, a lot of times I would ask him for advice and say to him, "Sir, how would you vote on this?" Or, how would you? Because I'd try to read everything and I couldn't get to it. So I'd ask him for his advice, figuring he knows a lot about schools, and I'll go to nurses, I'd go to teachers, I'd go to principals, and I'd get their advice, and that's how I came out and made a lot of decisions. But the one big thing I have to say tonight is I didn't put it in his evaluation, but I remember going to him and saying, "Listen, I don't like you on a moo-moo. I want you to have a contract." And I said, "I don't want to vote for Miss Durkin's contract or our new curriculum lady's contract until you have yours." And he told me this. He said, "Bob, don't do that. These are 2 marvelous women that deserve this job. Vote for them." That's why I voted for both of them. Not that I shouldn't have voted for them, but I wanted the superintendent to have his contract first. But he told me to vote for these 2 women. So I'm glad I gave you a high evaluation. Thank you for the job you've done since I've been here. And this school committee, to me, is on a roll. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Any further discussion? Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Superintendent, I think this is a good process. It's always, I think, good to sit down and reflect on goals and objectives and give some careful thought about the person you're evaluating. I gave you a proficient evaluation, which in my opinion is very good. I'm usually very stingy with marks like exemplary, although I have to say that I'm very impressed with the job that you've done over the past year or year and a half that we've worked together. In your review, I called out a couple of things, instructional leadership. Obviously, we're headed in the right direction, but there's always work to do there. Community engagement. I think you've done a pretty good job, actually, for somebody who has never been in Lowell, to come in and make connections with various community groups, the Lowell Plan and so forth. So I've been happy with that. Always work to be done there, but I feel as though, based on where you are in your development as a superintendent, you've done a pretty good job there. And finally, I just want to say, you came into this city, into the school district, at a pretty difficult time. We had a pretty divided school committee at the time. We were embroiled in a very, very difficult negotiation with the teachers union and the other unions. We had just lost our longtime business manager, who had all that institutional knowledge of the budget. He had to bring people on board. He had to navigate through all that. You were able to deliver a balanced budget. Were able to help us negotiate what I think is a very fair contract without any layoffs. And all in all, I feel very good about the past year and a half. And that said, we can always do better. And I've listed out many things that I'd like you to focus on in the year to come, and looking forward to making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to say this is 10 months that I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Kalfawe. Obviously, before I got back on the school committee, I also was paying attention to what was happening in the school district, and I agree with what my colleague to the left said, that he joined the city at some difficult time. There was some challenges that you faced. I think in looking back over the 10 months that I've worked closely with you, I think you've done a proficient job, and I did rate you as proficient. I also, I said in my comments specific areas where I think we have made some strides that are worth noting. The district performance issue, really looking at narrowing the achievement gap for all students. Those areas, reinvigorating the citywide parent council, being involved with that effort. These are areas that I think are important initiatives as we move forward. However, I feel it behooves me in this role to also, not to accentuate, because I think that the overall has been positive, but to look specifically at some areas that I think we could do more or improve on. And I think some of them come under just the umbrella of better communication. I had not been on the school committee for several years, so I don't know if things have changed in terms of that regular kind of just information that I feel is part of us being able to do our job, getting reports in a timely way so we get to read them before the meetings. And just as another specific example, when we talked about the park scores and the improvement, and I mentioned on the floor at that time that I would really look forward to seeing a deeper dive into that data. Because I know we're doing it as a district, but I think part of it, our role is to be as informed as we can, but also for our community to understand. We've always had that challenge as an urban school district of, we don't have the money to have people on staff doing PR for us, right? And everybody's jobs are filled with all these other important things that whenever we have the opportunity to talk about things we're doing right, things we're doing well, or ways we're making improvement, I want to see more of that. I want us to have more information that we can work with, and so I am going to have a motion on for next week's meeting that in the future I'd like to have that PowerPoint presentation, that deeper dive into the data, what we've learned from the recent test results, and where our focus is. So I think that for me, that piece, the communication, and that, and I agree with Mr. Gendron's comments that it was a difficult budget cycle, that there were factors out of your control with that. But again, I felt that the communication in that area could have been stronger for us. I found that there were recommendations that were made that then were pulled back, after some questions came up about it. So I don't want to in any way overshadow what I think has been a good job with the negative, but I feel like part of my role is to point out where are some ways that I'd like to see us making better improvements? And I think, as I mentioned, just to focus on the communication, both communication to the board and communication to our communities, I think would go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Dakota?
I want to just agree with everyone's comments. I think you've done a marvelous job in the short time that I've been on the school committee, just as having been a teacher in the system and having worked under several superintendents. I think you've done an admirable job, especially coming into a system and into a city like Lowell, where politics is a very large white elephant in the room. But I think you've kind of wrangled that elephant and done a really good job with it, actually, taming it. So I commend you. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dakota. And Mr. Hoey?
Can I speak twice on this?
Absolutely.
One thing I'd like to just say, that being on the school committee twice now, I feel this school committee, I'm not sure who should take the credit for this, but I look a lot at Ms. Martin, Mr. Gignac, and certain people about budgets, and of course, our CFO over there. But transparency has been something I've noticed with this school committee. We've worked on diversity, but we're also, things that have been brought up, it's because this school committee's starting to make the city look transparent at everything. Money, bidding, and it's the first time in a long time that we've had transparency like we've had. In the past, we used to do things and money would be passed out here and there, and no one would be looking at everything. But this school committee, Mayor, and you in charge of it, is working on that also. So I'm going to be quiet. I don't want to talk about too many things, but when I hear certain comments, sometimes I have to come back, and thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. As I had gone through my evaluation, I actually relied on the superintendent's previously established artifacts that he had listed in his proposed evaluation instrument that we started with over a year ago. So as you go through my comments, I'm sure you recognize that they're all pulled pretty much directly from what you had put forth at the very beginning. I do think that there have been some positive moves in the last few years. I know that we have some disagreements over time, but I appreciate that you keep coming at it, and that's a very laudable quality. I can guarantee I'll do the same. And I think that as we move forward, some of the topics that I listed as specific concerns, I think certainly we've talked about on this committee, the comments about the citywide parent council. I echo that. I don't feel I have any information on being able to judge that, having not received any kind of updates over the course of time on it. We've had a number of conversations about the budget process and how we're looking to see that improve in our next go-around. I am looking forward to seeing a strategic plan. I know that it's something that we have talked a great deal about, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a finished product soon that we'll be able to really dive into and be able to see some specific goals around that. But I think as we move forward, overall, I think mine came out at proficient. So we'll have our task set ahead of us. Thank you.
Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Superintendent, I think you've done a good job during this time that I've been able to work with you, and I agree with the overall rating of proficient. I think you've been able to accomplish some major tasks during your time here. As I look at your rankings, I think instructional leadership has been a strength of yours, and I think a lot of that has to do with the great people that you have surrounding you, and the principals and the curriculum office, the deputy superintendent. I think, Mr. Hoey had mentioned those two hires, and I think those two hires and a promotion were actually two of your real strengths. And I think you picked the right people for those positions, and I think a lot of that, I think we'll be, pleased with their performance going forward. And I must say I was really impressed by those hires, and my concerns that I laid out in the evaluation are discussions that we've had on the floor and subcommittee level, so I don't think they're any surprise to you. And I must say that you and your team have addressed those concerns moving forward, and I hope and I expect that you will continue to do that. And I think another area that you've been successful in is professional culture, and that is an area where it has been transparent in your efforts to really to make sure that the Lowell Public School students have the best, the very best quality educators and administrators and support staff that we possibly can have, and that the kids deserve. Family and community engagement has been an area that has been lacking in the past, and it seems to be something that has been reinvigorated, and I hope that it continues. And we talk about the Citywide Parent Council, and when I was first sworn into this committee, it was a very popular topic, and it was something that they were meeting regularly. I don't know if they're meeting anymore, but it was something that I was impressed with, that you had your assistants going out to their meetings, you had administrators going out to the meetings to talk to the parents about their concerns. As Ms. Martin pointed out, I don't know if that's occurring anymore, and it might not be a lack on your effort, but that's something that we should continue to improve upon, because it's an area where we often, as a school committee, hear about the negative parts of the school system, and I think those meetings were venues for parents to really get answers that they're looking for. I thought that was a real strength of yours at the beginning, and I hope it continues. The management and operations piece, I think as I mentioned, I've discussed my concerns with you throughout my time here, but most of them have been addressed, and I think that's, and I do appreciate that. And I know it's you have a new assistant superintendent for finance, and we've worked well together to address my concerns, and I understand it's a different process than it has been in the past, and we've had somebody in the position for a very long time that we've been comfortable with, and things change, and we're working to address those concerns. And I just want to say, I think the school department is heading in the right direction, and I think a lot of that has to do not only with yourself, but with those that you've surrounded yourself with. I think we're fortunate for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gignac. Any further discussion? If not, I would just like to commend the superintendent on a positive evaluation. I was very happy when the mayor's office was putting it together and seeing how he did in most areas. And I think that that's good. And I think that the news that came several weeks ago about the upgrading of several schools in the school district is good news, not just for the school committee, but also for everybody in Lowell, whether you have students that go to the schools in Lowell or whether you don't, because that has a positive impact on residential property values. There is no doubt that anybody that in real estate would tell you that one of the things that can have the most positive impact on property values is a strong school system, and you see that everywhere throughout the Commonwealth. And so certainly the upgrades that Lowell experienced this year, if that continues, it can only be positive. And I think that that achievement by the superintendent, by his team, is reflected in the evaluation that was just done by the school committee. On another note, because we'll be going into executive session, and I also think that there was an article in Commonwealth Magazine probably a couple of months ago that talked about school districts, and it said that the average tenure for a superintendent in Massachusetts right now is 3.2 years, which isn't very long. And it also implied that school districts that have a long-term superintendent have stability, and that stability serves the district well. And so I think everybody on the school committee should keep that in mind when we go into executive session, that it's important that we have a stable superintendent in a stable school department that's heading in the same direction and not switching directions every couple of years with the new superintendency. There was one community, and I won't mention it by name, but they went through, I think, 7 or 8 superintendents in a 9-year period. which was terrible, and as a result, they are in receivership right now. So it just goes to show you just how much of an impact having a strong and effective superintendent, how important that is. And then on a third point, let me just say that I think that this school committee has helped the superintendent. This is a school committee that has worked well together so far compared to other school committees in the past. And, you know, I think that together we have good chemistry, and I think that everybody comes to get along with everybody else, which doesn't mean that we always have to agree, but certainly everybody so far has disagreed without being disagreeable, and I think that that goes a long way. And so all of the members of the school committee should be commended for that as well. And if you serve as the chairman of the school committee, that's a big plus, and it certainly makes my job a lot easier. So I appreciate that, and I just wanted to say that out loud and publicly, and this just seemed like an appropriate time. So with that, Mr. Superintendent, do you have any remarks that you would like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind everybody not to be the bureaucrat in the room, but you do have to take a vote. Unfortunately, the state requires it, that you take an official vote on the overall rating that you just exposed. So I would ask for that vote if you don't mind, because tomorrow we have to report it to the state. So.
Is that it, Mr. Superintendent? You just want to urge?
No, after you vote, and I'll have my comments.
All right, do we have a motion by Mr. Hoey to approve the evaluation and accept it as a report of progress? Second by Mr. Gignac. Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, committee. I'll be very brief. I think it's, thank you for your evaluation. I accept your evaluation, and I thank you for your positive comments. I think they're not, as Mr. Gignac said, no one of us achieves on their own. It's thanks to the team. And when you're surrounded by these great people, what do you expect? You know, you have to rise up to their level and be as good as they are, and then they make you look good. So thank you, Deputy. Thank you, assistants. I think they deserve a lot, and the rest of the administration as well. And thank you, committee, because you can't do your job unless you have a supporting committee. Not that the supporting committee doesn't mean that they have to agree with me or I have to agree with them all the time. And as Connie said earlier, we'll continue to disagree, but as long as we do it in a very civilized way and we respect each other, I think it just makes us all look good. And I thank you for that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for continuing to be more on, when criticizing is really for the good of the schools, for the good of the system. It's nothing personal on anybody, certainly not on my part. And I hope we're going to have another great year for the benefit of the city and our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing and deliberating on matters regarding the contract negotiations for the superintendent of schools and litigation and collective bargainings of all unions. The motion of that effect by Mr. Gignac, second by Mr. Hoey. Discussion, roll call. And I'm sorry, we'll be adjourning from executive session rather than to come back into open session. Story.
So part of this, the executive session is to discuss our union contract negotiations, right? So the superintendent will be there for that part, as well as the contract part, or just trying to
I'm not
clarify?
sure that it's necessary for him to be there for either part of this discussion. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, that's probably that's an okay idea.
Well, I think in terms of looking at the language changes, I thought that was what was on the agenda with our contracts. I'm looking for guidance on that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Roll call.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Dakota?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.